I want to talk about Raw 1 and 2 for the original Xbox. Now, a lot has been said about these games, mostly negative. Some of that is justly due, but I think a lot of it is a bit unfair. These games receive a ton of criticism for just kind of being sloppy, clunky, not really refined, a lack of depth, roster, game modes being dated, so on and so forth. But I think it's important to look at these games with context, and you kind of got to look at them not in a vacuum, but, within the terms of when they came out. So at the beginning of 2002, we got the first Raw, and its competition at the time was Smackdown Just Bring It, which was released just a few months prior and had its fair share of issues as well, but it was a valiant first effort on the PlayStation 2 console. Raw was kind of in a similar boat. Now, it was also published by THQ, but it was not developed by the Ukes that we all know and love today. No, this game was developed by a company called Anchorage. Anchor. I can't even pronounce their name correctly, but they were defunct shortly after releasing Raw. As a matter of fact, they went defunct after releasing Raw 2. These were the final two games that studio developed. But I digress. My point is, it was kind of cool that THQ had a Smackdown game for the PlayStation console, and then they had the Raw games for the Xbox, and then they started off having the GameCube games be the WrestleMania series, but that kind of devolved into something else, or evolved, depending on how you want to look at it. I prefer evolved. Now, coming from Smackdown 2, Know Your Role, to Smackdown Just Bring It, that was a huge jump on the PlayStation console. I thought it couldn't get much better than that. But then I start seeing trailers and, ads for the new Xbox console, and it was showing things that you had never seen on a home console before. The polygon counts in some of these games that were being released, especially at launch, was just, they were system sellers in and of themselves, just from a visual standpoint. And that's going to be kind of a common running theme here throughout these conversations that we have about these Raw games. See, when I first saw the trailer for the first Raw game, I immediately knew that I had to have it. I had never seen a wrestling game with the presentation that I was seeing here. The crowd looked so real, they looked so alive, they didn't just look like 2D cutouts. The entrances, oh my god, the entrances, the lighting, the pyro, everything was perfect. The way the superstars moved and got into the ring, I just had to have this game. I was salivating as a kid. But there was one problem. I did not have an Xbox. Nobody had an Xbox. It just came out. It was kind of an unproven, Microsoft, they're a computer company. They're making video game consoles now. It would kind of be like if Apple put out a game console now for home, just to kind of give you guys an idea for, some of the younger listeners out there. You gotta wrap your head around how crazy it was that Microsoft put out a game console in the first place. And now they're putting out wrestling games on it. And me, as the gaming fan and wrestling fan, I had to have it. I remember begging my mom, begging and pleading for weeks and weeks and weeks. I said, Mom, I gotta have this game. You don't understand. There's nothing else like it. Nothing can compare. And of course, I'm just going based off of stills, screenshots, and trailers that looked pretty, but they did not accurately represent the gameplay. And for those of you who remember the Smackdown Just Bring It opening cinematics, this was during a time period where the opening cutscenes were just not reflective of the gameplay. I remember that the bar was set so high watching some of these opening cinematics, especially in Smackdown Just Bring It, which, like I said, released just a few months prior to the first Raw. And it set a bar so high that the gameplay could never in a million years live up to. You could argue that games today, in the year 2024, still do not look as good as that intro from 2001. So after weeks and weeks of begging, I eventually got an Xbox. And what did I want for my first game? Did I want, Halo? Did I want Fable? Did I want whatever the heck was out at the time? No, I wanted WWF Raw. And I got it. And I remember bringing it home and putting it in and watching that opening play. Now it just showed, instead of like, a cinematic opening with gameplay and stuff like that, it just showed the opening to the show, which at the time was actually kind of cool and not uncommon for games of that time. You got to remember, I think the first Smackdown game, that might have been a customized opening, but my point is games sometimes would have custom openings and sometimes they would just have the show opening. This game was the latter. But after that show opening, you get the pyro going off, like the real start of a Monday Night Raw. Raw is war. the crowd going nuts. You hear that you hear that guitar riff, and the crowd's going nuts, and you just, from that press any key, press any button start menu, you just feel the electricity flowing through you for the first time. I was hooked. I was like, this game is already awesome. I haven't even done anything yet. And then you press start, and the menu layout is pretty cool too, and you still get that cool show riff. And I think on the PC version, Vince McMahon is narrating like all of the menu options. On the Xbox version, you do not have that, but it's still cool nonetheless. So the first thing that many people do is, you start a single player match. You just want to get the controls down. So I did that. And yes, as advertised, the entrances were phenomenal. The pyro, the lighting, oh my word, the lighting. The lighting in today's 2K games cannot even hold a candle to some of the lighting you can do in this. And I will go into more in depth as to what I mean by that, because some of you may be scoffing and being like, okay, the lighting's not that good. Calm down. But you gotta give this game credit for coming out in 2002. What else is really cool is that you could actually ambush opponents on the way to the ring too during the entrance, which that was a feature missing from the Smackdown games for years and years and years. So yes, the presentation's awesome. Seeing Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H just moving like their real life counterparts, man. I was so ready to go. And then, as the great Bruce Pritchard likes to say on his Something to Wrestle podcast, and then the bell rang. And that's when all the problems really started to surface. The controls just were not there. And I'm not talking about like they were kind of janky at times, or they were a little bit unresponsive. They're not as quick as you'd like them to be. No, the controls, to put it bluntly, are horrible in WWF Raw. I mean, the right stick, for crying out loud, doesn't do anything. The B button does way too many things. I mean, it pins, it picks up weapons, it enters and exits the ring. It's just way too much. You'll be doing the wrong thing sometimes when you want to go for a pin. It's very frustrating. Even doing something as simple as hitting your finisher is very hard. I mean, with The Rock, if you want to do the people's elbow, he takes off the elbow pad, he bounces off the ropes, but then you're expected to hit that elbow, and nothing tells you about that, and trying to get superstars to line up for a strike is very difficult. It kind of reminds me of the Fire Pro Wrestling games in that regard, just like in a 3D setting. Lining up somebody at the perfect angle should not be that difficult in a 3D game. Fire Pro kind of gets a pass because it's 2D isometric view, but anyways, you get the point. I mean, the camera angles in the match are cool, and the presentation never falters. I mean, the ring looks good, the lighting in the arena is awesome, the crowd looks good. It's just, it's just not there control-wise. I even really like that after, like, a big high-impact move, like a finisher or what have you, you get to see the cool, like, picture-in-picture replay that they used to show on Raw back then. Oh, and I should mention, like, the pre-match, the face-offs, like the tail of the tape right before the match starts, that's cool. That looked just like the real-life counterparts. For Raw and SmackDown, they had it, man. You can't say enough good things about the presentation. It's just the gameplay just tanked this game to a level that it couldn't come back from. And any shot of redemption was thrown out the window when you see that there's a lack of like a season or story mode. No, you don't have that, which is a real shame because Just Bring It had a story mode. Smackdown 2 had a season mode with, cinematic cutscenes and whatnot. And so did the first Smackdown game. So to see the first effort from THQ on Raw with no story mode or season mode just seemed like a step backwards. No, instead you go through a gauntlet for any title you want, from the women's title to the WWF title. You pick a superstar, you get thrown in a match, you play the match, you win the match, you move on to the next opponent, and so on and so forth until you face the champion and you win. That's it. You can unlock some superstars, you can unlock Shane, Stephanie, and Vince, I think, and Fred Durst, I believe, or maybe that's in another mode. But my point is, this game was just lacking features, match types, and gameplay, so as pretty as it was, it just could not make up for it. And here's the real kicker. This game had a creation suite unlike anything we had ever seen and will have seen for years to come, especially on the SmackDown side of things. The Create a Superstar, seriously, knocked my socks off. There were so many options. You could make your superstar look like whatever you wanted, and Raw 2 is no exception. I'm going to be mentioning this in a moment, being able to edit real superstars and throw any kind of attire you want on them. I mean, that's something you couldn't do in the WWE 2K games for for a while. I think you could do like from their torso down, starting with 2K14, only on certain superstars, and then, you got a little more freedom down the road, but on Raw 2, you were really able to go buck wild. I mean, here, look at this. Look at all your options. You can make your superstar look like whatever you want. You can customize his allies, his enemies, and that has an impact for matches with interference. Someone will come to your aid, or someone will come out to whoop up on you. That's all cool. You can kind of tweak their personality as you see fit. You can put their attributes into different stats, just like in WWF No Mercy, so you can really personalize your superstar. Like, I like playing as a luchador, so of course I'm going to make him more high-flying, add more to his aerial abilities and things like that. But the ultimate badge of honor for WWF Raw was its create an entrance. So much customization. You really had free reign on everything. From the pyro, the fog, the lighting. You can edit the lighting of each individual row of the ramp. You can edit the lighting of each individual section of the Titantron, the spotlights in the crowd, the flickering effects, just everything. I mean, the game doesn't tell you no at all. And different colors, different shades, different textures, different patterns. It was amazing. I spent so many hours creating different entrances in this game, and then you go over to the Smackdown side on the PS2 and you can really just, put moves, Titantron, and music. That was really it for years. So Raw was such a pioneer, and I still think their create an entrance beats the hell out of anything we have today. So the first Raw, maybe not the best first effort, but it did have some good positives that made a lasting impression on me. So when Raw 2 was announced, I was like, okay, a solid foundation. I have my Xbox already. There's no reason I shouldn't get this game. Start saving my pennies. And that's exactly what I did. And when I brought this game home for the first time and popped it in, I thought, okay, this is going to be an improvement, because visually, it certainly did look better. On the first Raw, while it did look pretty, some of the characters, especially in match, like not during entrances, they moved rather stiffly. And you still get a little bit of this on Raw 2. It's funny, the Xbox, for as pretty as it was, it can never really get motion capture correct. Even a game released a couple years later, not by the same company, Anchor, but WrestleMania 21, that's an entirely different video. Characters move very awkwardly in that as well, so maybe that's just an Xbox issue. This game already had a lot of what was lacking in the first Raw. More game modes, more match types. It had an actual season mode. The presentation was still just as good as the first Raw, if not even better. You could still attack people on the way to the ring. The lighting in the arenas was still phenomenal. All the good things about the Creation Suite and the first Raw are there in Raw 2, so, it checks all those boxes. The season mode is kind of cool. You get to play as any superstar, go through a year. You get to kind of plot their actions throughout every single week. For Raw, SmackDown, and pay-per-views. You can rest up, of course, in between matches. You got to manage your stamina and whatnot, and manage your popularity and your relationship with other superstars as well. It was kind of like the first iteration of a universe mode, if you think about it that way. You could set traps for other superstars. You could encourage other superstars. You could steal items from other superstars, and all of these actions have risk and reward within the season mode. They could backfire, or they could work, or something totally different could happen. You could get ambushed while resting, for example. If you set a trap for somebody, it could miss entirely or hit the wrong person, and then you'll start like a hostile rivalry with that person. And so it was kind of fun, but there's no subtitles, no voiceover, nothing like that, so you kind of got to fill in the blanks yourself. But as a kid, I mean, it was pretty good, but the bad thing about this game is where Raw was kind of in a stone age for season modes, and SmackDown was spitting out like Here Comes the Pain during the time that Raw 2 was out, which to this day is the best SmackDown game of all time in my opinion. So it was kind of hard to measure up to that. I spent a lot more time playing that game, obviously, and this season mode felt like a hollow shell in comparison. But it was still cool, and I still had a good amount of fun with it. The gameplay improved, and it's a real shame that we didn't get a Raw 3, because we had a shaky foundation, okay? But there was some good from it. And then we built on that. We had a season mode. We were trending in an upward direction, and the games felt vastly different from each other. and you know, they weren't spitting them out every year. They were coming out in a couple years. So I think if in like 2005 we could have got another one instead of WrestleMania 21, which is what we did have, that kind of started from scratch. I mean, who knows? You know, that's kind of one of the big what ifs. Yeah, Raw really left a lasting impression with me, and I think its creation suite really set the bar that I don't think a game has exceeded to this day entirely. So if you guys have never played these Raw games, please check them out, play them, seek them out. They're dirt cheap because, frankly, nobody really wants them, but there is fun to be had here, especially in multiplayer. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of Raw. Where were you when Raw launched? Did you get it at launch? Were you disappointed with it back in the day, or have you never played it? Are you interested in picking it up? Let me know. Do the YouTube stuff for me, guys, and I will catch you next time. Take care.